Does everyone have another evaluation form?
Yeah, I think I gave everybody enough.
Yeah, no?
While we're waiting for the last couple people to show up for our canopy tour, I'm going to just introduce myself. I'm Nathan, and you guys are here for the canopy tour, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Wrong spot? Okay, good. So while we're waiting, just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you've been to a canopy tour before. Okay, nice. Have you all been to this canopy tour before? So yes. Some of you have. Excellent. How about, so if you've been to the canopy tour, this canopy tour, you've been to this forest before. Have you guys ever been to the forest before for something other than canopy tour?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff have you been to the forest for?
Hiking.
Hiking?
Yeah.
Bird watching.
Bird watching. How do you guys fairly often do you come to the forest, or just kind of occasionally? Just every week? Oh well, looks like our last person has shown up, so we'll go ahead and get started. So again, welcome to the Outdoor Education Center. I'm Nathan, and I'm thrilled you guys are here to join us for a canopy tour. I want to give you a brief orientation to what we'll be doing, and then we'll get out there and get our equipment on and get on the zip line. Does that sound good? All right, so the whole canopy tour takes about 2 hours. From the time we get our gear on to the time we come back and take it off. While we're out on the tour, we'll go through 4 zip lines, an aerial bridge, and then we'll rappel off the end, and we'll hike back up here. And along the way, I'll be actually giving you some information about the forest. So obviously, we just described that you just arrived at the Outdoor Education Center in the Cooper's Rock State Forest. And so we're excited to kind of clue you in a little bit of the information about the place that we're in right now. Does that sound good? All right. So along the way, while we do that, we're going to explore how this forest we're in is like this multi-tool. You guys, have you ever seen these things before? Everybody hopefully has one of these. These are great gadgets, right? There's all kinds of good stuff on here. And so that's what we're going to spend our time sort of exploring, is how the forest we're standing in is just like this guy right here. To do that, I want to sort of pose a question now that we'll revisit on the first platform once we're all harnessed up and we've gone through ground school. So here's the question. You guys ready? The question is, what use is a forest? So just kind of put that in the back of your head. What use is a forest? And we'll revisit that in a moment. All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll get harnessed up. So this is us. Everybody do your best impersonation of getting harnessed up. In there? All right, excellent. So CJ, that was more of a dance crowd. So I'll put the harness on. All right. Hey, so welcome to the first platform. You all did great on ground school. We're excited to go ahead and get started. So I mentioned during orientation, we're going to explore how the forest we're standing in is like this guy, this multi-tool. And so it begs the question first, what forest are we standing in, right? So I think I mentioned this earlier. Does anybody remember what forest we're in?
Cooper's Rock.
We are. We're in Cooper's Rock State Forest. Cooper's Rock State Forest is actually the biggest forest in the West Virginia State Forest System. And then specifically, does anybody know what part of the Cooper's Rock State Forest we're in?
University.
That's correct. We're in what's known as the Research Forest, or the University Forest, which is part of this Cooper's Rock that's leased to the university for education and research purposes. Yeah, right on. It's actually, the part of the forest we're in is about 7,600 acres. It's a really big part of the forest, which is roughly, to give you an idea, it's actually the size of Morgantown. It's actually a little bit bigger than the size of Morgantown, all the downtown, Evansdale, all those areas of Morgantown. So pretty big place we're in. We're in a small part of it called the Outdoor Education Center. So why is it important? Why is it important to know what forest we're in? Well, I asked you a question earlier. The question was, what use is a forest? And if it's fair to ask that question, it's fair to say, well, what forest are we in? What uses, what forest are we talking about? And I made the analogy that we're going to explore how the forest is like this multi-tool, right? The reason these things tie together is because we are in what's called a multi-use forest. It's meant to be used for multiple purposes, just like this guy here. So if you guys have never played with one of these, it's great. There's screwdrivers, there's scissors, there's a knife, you can cut, you can twist and pry, do all the kinds of great stuff with this, right? So earlier I asked the question, what use is a forest? I just described what use this is. So why don't you guys tell me what you think? What use is a forest? What use is this forest we're standing in?
It's pretty.
It's pretty. It is. I agree with that fully.
For recreation fun
sure.
stuff?
You guys are here and engaged in an activity that it's very recreational. It's fun. I hope that you guys have fun doing it. So recreation, absolutely.
Like the using forest like a classroom.
You feel like it's like a classroom. That's really good because, again, the research forest is meant for education and research. Yeah, very good.
I saw some like orange bands around trees, and I don't know if those are ones that are going to be cut down, maybe?
They could well be, and you bring up a great use of a forest, which is wood products, right? So the forest it supplies a huge variety of wood products. So those are all great uses of forest, right? really good, you guys are on this. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to zip to the next platform, and I'd love to pick up with this conversation there, but I really want you guys to, on this first one, just to focus on zipping. I'm giving you instructions on how to do that. Go ahead and do that. This is the sound of us zipping. So everybody get your best zip line position.
Woo!
No, not yet, Dave.
Don't break yet. Break.
Do not send, do not send.
Excellent. All right. Hey, welcome to our next platform. On the last one, we talked about quite a few different uses of the force, right? Now, as you might imagine, those forces that we talked about a bunch of them. They may not all actually be able to be utilized at the same time. And so, I'll revisit this analogy, right? Here's this great tool, and it's got all kinds of stuff on it. So let's say that I need to tighten a screw while I'm holding the nut on the back side of the screw. That'd be a bit of a problem. I can't actually do both of those things with this tool at the same time. So similarly, our force, we named a bunch of uses. We can't use them all for these multiple purposes at the same time, right? And so, what are some potentially conflicting uses we might experience? Well, somebody mentioned earlier that this place is beautiful, and I really agree with that. It really is beautiful. But you can see that this deck we're standing on is made of wood, right? And that wood's got to come from somewhere. So we can't, if we remove the trees for that purpose to create this wood product that we're all actually relying on at the moment, we might not at the same time be able to utilize the forest in the same way. So we've got a conflicting use similar to our tool. What are some other conflicting uses you can imagine based on the uses we threw out earlier?
Recreation and trees being cut down.
Sure, so a lot of people who enjoy the woods for recreational purposes don't really want to see all the trees removed. That's a really good and very common example. And what else?
Different recreation uses might conflict with each other.
Okay, say more. It's a really
Like bird watchers and mountain bikers.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, especially if it's a squeaky mountain bike.
Yeah, or just moving fast, maybe whooping and hollering. Not a bad thing, but bird watchers want it quiet because they're going to let the birds fly away.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we're going to explore this a little bit more in our next stop because I think this is sort of important to understanding how a multi-use forest is similar to this tool, right? So let's go ahead and zip to the next one. So you do maybe make it a little quicker. That's what there we go. All right, zipping, and we're done. All right. So we mentioned how there can be conflicting uses at our last stop, right? I want to ask the question, have you ever seen those sort of conflicting uses portrayed in the media or maybe seen around your community? Sometimes how those uses might conflict.
Greenpeace?
Greenpeace, yeah, okay, so say more about that. That invokes a lot of imagery for folks.
Japanese whale boats and people.
Yeah, you've got people on like sort of one end just doing everything they can, sometimes going to crazy lengths to protect the resource for one thing, and other people extracting the resources, and those two things collide. Good. Any other examples?
The cartoonish macho forester versus the very feminine tree hugger.
Okay, gotcha. So that brings up a great point. So CJ brings up this sort of like stereotypical examples of people that engage in these different forces. So let me paint. I don't think this will be a stretch, but let me paint a picture. So we've got your standard like typical tree hugging hippie, right? He's wearing fleece. I'm wearing fleece at the time. He's probably got sandals on. He drives a Subaru with Save the Whale stickers on his way to his vegan restaurant, and in his free time, he changed himself to bulldozers. Right? Good. What other stereotypes can you associate with forest use? So we got the tree hugger.
Maybe hunters in a tree stand.
Big truck.
Yeah, big truck, ATV.
Lots of guns.
Lots of guns.
Yeah, lots.
Shoot at anything that
Loud
moves. Right?
muffler.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got the tree hugger. We got the hunter.
You got the outdoor adventure nut.
Okay.
Like full-on mountain bike gear. He's got maybe a GoPro camera.
Oh, he's got 20 of them
camera
strapped all
connected
over his body.
and
Bike. Yeah. He'll never do anything with the footage.
Right.
But he's got the GoPros, right?
You got the nerdy professor out there.
Yeah.
Taking pictures,
Taking
photographers,
pictures.
yeah, those damn tripods in the way.
Oh, man.
And then, just to throw another one out, you got that forester who just cut down anything.
Right.
If it's made of wood, it's gone. You cut it down. It's out of there, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So those are. It's fun sometimes, I think, to play on stereotypes, right? But let me ask you a question: are stereotypes always true? Are they always to the mark?
Always.
Always. Some people might agree with that. I think we probably find some middle ground and say that at least not all the time our stereotypes are 100% accurate, right? So this creates a problem if the stereotypes aren't always accurate, it creates a problem because if we start to view people based on these stereotypes, we sort of diminish them down to the level of being this one type of thing. We don't allow them to be complex and hold multiple views, or even, and I think this is a bigger problem, we don't envision them using the forest for multiple things. So we sort of view them as only this plier or only this screwdriver, and we don't get to see them as sort of being somebody who works in the forest products industry but also enjoys recreation or also enjoys different sort of aesthetic qualities of the forest, right? Why is that a problem? Well, if we're going to understand the forest as a multi-use forest, we've got to get past these barriers and not sort of just view the forest as our one sort of niche use of it. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and move on, and we're going to go to the next platform. And I want to sort of, as we do, I want to encourage you on the zip, since you guys are all getting better at zipping, I want you to think about as we zip through here, just look around the forest and see some of the multi-uses that you can envision coming out of this forest.
Is this an actual recording from the...
It is, yeah. It's from the Science Behind the Sports Center. So, welcome to our next platform. You know, we had this great conference. I really appreciate your all's input on this conversation. It's been fun. We talked about this idea of conflict, right? And even these stereotypes that we kind of associate that cause some of the conflict. I'd like to suggest that perhaps one of the reasons why we encounter conflict is because we see the forest as this sort of finite resource that gets used up, and we've got to get our share of it in order to enjoy what we want to enjoy out of it. So picture the forest, if you will, as a pie. So we just had Thanksgiving last week. We all probably ate too much pie. I did. Maybe I'm personifying that. But if we envision the forest as a pie, and the forest wood products guy takes his big slice, and the recreation folks take their slice, we see the pie diminishing, right? And so if we see a resource we want diminishing, we get a little bit upset about it. We get protective, and we get sort of grabby. And so I think you guys can envision how that conflict then takes place. Well, I want to sort of challenge that to some degree, because if we view the forest as this multi-tool, this multiple use implement, we can maybe take from that well, let me put it this way: when we use the screwdriver in this tool, do we tear the screwdriver off and throw it away, or can we continually use the screwdriver? If we did have to throw this away, some aspect of this away every time we used it, it'd get really expensive, and really quickly we'd find ourselves like buying more and more tools, and maybe we deplete the resource that the tool's made out of. I'd like to suggest that the forest is similar. Any use that we do in a multi-use forest had better be sustainable. So sustainability is a term that gets thrown around a lot, and I think we sort of grasp the concept for the most part. But it's the idea of being able to use a resource for the long haul without destroying the resource, so we can continually access and use it. So I'm going to introduce what I like to think of as a pop quiz. If you don't like pop quizzes, you can feel free to think of it as something else. Initially, it may not seem like it relates to this conversation, but I promise we'll come back around. So we're standing on this platform. The platform is 19 feet above the ground. Right? We're a red oak tree. Red oak trees grow at about 1.5 feet a year, is the average for a red oak tree. If this platform we're standing on is 19 feet high, this tree grows 1.5 feet a year, in 10 years, how high will this platform be? So take a minute to think about it, and then I'd love to hear some answers. There's no consequences for getting this wrong, by the way. You don't get a failing grade, you don't get kicked off the team.
19 feet a year?
The tree grows 1.5 feet a year, the platform's already at 19 feet. So in 10 years, how high will we be?
4,000 feet.
4,000 feet.
34 feet.
34 feet.
15 feet higher?
15 feet higher? Okay.
The exact same spot.
Oh, interesting. So those are all really good answers. I appreciate you throwing them out. However, only one of them is actually correct, and it's this man here, actually. It's not the several thousand feet. I actually wish it was. I think so, CJ, why is that true? Why is it only going to be the same height in 10 years?
Trees don't necessarily grow from their roots up. They grow outwards and they have shoots that come out on top.
That's right. So while this tree does put on height, it all goes out from the branches. So this trunk actually doesn't grow up. This platform we're standing on doesn't grow up, but the tree goes out at this level. Well, why is that important, and how does it relate to sustainability? Well, here's the deal. If this platform would grow up, really quickly we'd find this zip line pretty useless, because it would change the angles and everything would be off. Additionally, if this tree grows out, we'd better do something to protect the tree, because we have these cables coming around this tree, and let me just point out these blocks that this cable goes through. That actually keeps the tree from constricting on itself and killing itself, from essentially choking itself off. Well, those 2 points are really important, because if we built this tour and in 2 years it was useless, we're not exactly sustainable, right? And it is like tearing off this tool and throwing it out. So we need to plan for this tree or this course to be more sustainable, to be used for the long haul. Similarly, any good forest use in a multi-use forest has to be sustainable. Now, that might beg the question, like, how are some things that we describe sustainable? How is cutting trees down, and maybe one forest use we didn't talk a lot about it, but it's hunting. How is killing animals, removing them from the forest? How can those things be sustainable? It's a good question. We're going to visit it on our next stop. Sound good? All right. All right. So here we go. We're gonna sort of cross this bridge, and now that we're on this platform. And as we do, I want you to look at the forest area below us, because this area below us actually holds the answer to the question I posed earlier. How can some things be sustainable that seem to be more extraction oriented? So let's cross the bridge, and as we do, what do you notice about the area down below the course out here? What do you notice about this area?
Is it only small trees?
There is only small trees. Thank you for making that huge leap. Yeah, this area, it's got smaller trees, right? What else do you notice about those trees? What else do you notice about the area?
Very shrubbery.
Okay, they're sort of tightly woven. There's not much space in there.
Different kinds of trees?
And there are actually different kinds of trees, and you can tell the leaf type is different. You can tell that in the area breakdown looks. Well, great. Those are great observations. So the area below us was actually clear cut in 2002. So it's been about 11 years or so, depending on what time maybe it was cut, since this area was clear cut. So this area has sort of essentially regrown from there. How does that answer our earlier question? Well, here's the deal. Nobody actually came back and replanted this area. This area, once it was cut, was left alone, and it will automatically grow back through a process that's known as regeneration, so the automatic regrowth of the forest. As Doug noted, they're not the same trees, and it actually goes through this process of different types of trees grow up and are succeeded by different types of trees. That's sometimes called forest succession. I can never pronounce that word. Succession. And so through that process, it's going to regrow. So that answers the question: how can wood cutting be sustainable? Well, it's going to grow back, right? What we have to look at with sustainability is not what does it look like from tomorrow to the day after, but what does it look like from generation to generation. So that's part of the answer. And then similarly with wildlife extraction, with hunting, as long as the number of species or animals taken doesn't exceed their ability to reproduce, it's a similar sort of concept. You're planning for the long term, and in fact that's a management technique or a way that they can limit the overpopulation of some species like deer. Does that make sense to everybody, that concept of sort of like how some things that seem to be like extraction oriented can actually be sustainable? All right, so we've got one final zip, and we'll sort of talk about the tour and wrap it up there. So buckle in for the long haul. This is our longest zip. It's hopping down the line.
That's amazing. Yeah.
All right. So as we get to our last platform here, I'd love to challenge you guys to just sort of take a look around the forest. We're now down at the bottom of that clear cut that we were previously looking down on, and I want you to look at both that clear cut and all the big stands around us. I want you to sort of close your eyes for a second, and I want you to imagine this whole landscape with no forest on it. There's no forest at all. As you're doing that, don't just imagine what it would look like, but imagine what uses we would no longer be able to access. So it's not just simply that there's no trees, but there's no forest extraction. There's no none of the recreation that's particular to a forest. None of the wildlife that relies on the forest to live. So you can open your eyes again and look at what is actually here, and again, connect with the abundance that's here, the type of the growth, the continual changes that are taking place within the forest. So, like a good multi-tool, the forest that you are looking at serves a whole lot of purposes. And understanding how that forest works, understanding how succession works, understanding how sustainability works, understanding how uses compete but also can cooperate, we can understand that the value behind a good multi-use forest. So I want to challenge you as you come back and visit the forest. I think in talking with you earlier, a lot of you guys do visit the forest often. I want to challenge you to continually see not only the use that you're enjoying at the moment, but all the uses that are taking place in the forest. And I want to encourage you to listen to the conversations that are happening around those views. Maybe challenge some of those stereotypes you've heard in places where they're sort of like causing conversation not to happen or causing negative sort of conversation to happen. And ultimately sort of spread the word about multi-use forests so we can continue to sustain them and enjoy all the uses that come out. So thank you guys all for doing the canopy tour. Now we have a grueling hike up the hill, and good job, Harlan. Thank you.
All right, good job, Nathan.
How long was that, Dave?
20 minutes and 11 seconds.
Like I said, it's pretty easy to.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You're apologizing.
I'm apologizing already.
Yeah, I'll pull it up while we're.
How late in the season did you guys go up there?
Well, we stopped at the end of, really kind of at the end of October. There was a couple of programs straight in November.
Yeah.
We actually, I mean, as far as our regularly scheduled tours, we actually are really